it used to be a 12-hour day between my commute and getting to the office and getting settled. How much work was I actually doing? I'm able to actually get done whatever needed to be done in half of that time, because I'm not dilly-dallying over the coffee machine. I'm not, fiddling around. When we have a Zoom call, right, it's scheduled for these 8 people to be on for this 45 minutes to achieve this objective, and then we go on to the next thing. The structure of it forces us to stay on point.
We have the pleasure of welcoming Peter Winick today to our interview series. I'm Vanessa Rose from peopleHum team. Let's begin with just a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Awards for HCM, that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run a peopleHum blog and the video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, Peter Winick is the CEO and co-founder of Thought Leadership Leverage. He's a well-renowned podcast host and has helped individuals and organizations build and grow revenue streams through designing and growing their thought leadership platforms. His clients include New York Times best-selling business book authors, members of the Speakers Hall of Fame, and many more. We are happy to have someone of his stature on our interview series. Welcome, Peter. We are thrilled to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me today. Thank you.
So let's begin with the first question. Peter, could you please tell us something about the interesting work that you carry out at Thought Leadership Leverage?
Sure. So our work is interesting in that we help people take ideas that they have worked on, nurtured, developed over years and sometimes decades, and help them crack the code on the strategy that enables them to get those ideas out to more people, get those ideas out in ways that generate more profit, and ultimately have a greater impact.
What do you think are the key elements you look for before signing up someone for your services? What differentiates a true thought leader from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple questions in there. So one is sort of defining what thought leadership is, because I think it's a term that has started to get bounced around all over the place and diluted to some level. So there is content marketing, right, which is great, but that's not thought leadership. So I think thought leadership is understanding, well, one is the definition is it's not something you should call yourself. It's something that others in the community, colleagues, profession sort of bestow upon you as a sign of respect, acknowledgement for your work, etc. And so that's the first thing. And what thought leadership is really 2 elements. There's the thought piece, which is what you're putting out there truly thoughtful? Is it something new? Is it unique? Is it based on research? Is it based on experience? Are you adding to the conversation in a discipline that's already existed before you? The second piece is the leadership piece of it, because there's a place to just sort of recap or repurpose or say what's already been known. But the leadership piece is basically having the courage to take that conversation to a new direction, to a new place, to a new audience, to a new discipline. So that to me is thought leadership. Going back to your question in terms of what we look for, we only work with thought leaders that have content that has a business application. So we don't believe, well, I shouldn't say we don't believe, we don't do any direct to consumer. We don't do any self-help. We don't do any, sort of love and relationship. It's not that there aren't thought leaders in that space. That's just not what we do. It has to have a benefit to an organization or a business that is measurable.
Okay, that's interesting. So how do you think leaders create a win-win for everyone in their team?
Sure. So I think through the lens of thought leadership, a win-win that leaders could take would be, one, the content is beneficial to me as an individual, as a human, right, as a person. And part of that is my job, right? But there's other elements to who I am. And great thought leadership and great content has application beyond the 9 to 5 or whatever the title is on my job. So I think that's the way. So if great leaders can provide They're people with content that benefits them as individuals, that benefits them as members of the team and the organization, and ultimately benefits the organization as well. That's a win-win.
Okay, so it's having content and also putting it across in a great manner.
Yeah, exactly.
What critical engagement factors are important in promoting the original content of published work?
In promoting the content, so
Yes.
I think that well, one is, and it seems obvious, but I'll say it anyway, it's got to be good, right? So given that we're living in a time where information is no longer scarce, right? It used to be up until, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, there was a scarcity of information. Now we have the opposite problem, which brings new challenges. We're living in an era where there's an abundance of information. We're drowning in information. So if that's the case, I don't have the time to sift through things that aren't good. And people's bars are being raised to say, yeah, if you're bringing something to me and I'm going to invest 5 hours reading your book or 20 minutes listening to your podcast or your TED Talk, it better raise my awareness. It better give me something that causes me to sort of think differently about something.
So if it doesn't add value to us anymore, we just don't. It's not worth time.
Yeah, and if you look at 99.9% of what's on YouTube or what people put on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, it's not particularly relevant. It's not particularly interesting. It's not particularly thoughtful. And the things that I want something that's highly relevant to me. I want something that is really thoughtful, that gets me thinking about a problem that I've had in a different way. I want something that's intriguing. I want something that's interesting. I don't have time for the same old.
Yeah, that's so true. So how important do you think marketing is in becoming a lever to build a great brand around an original thought?
Yeah, so I think the stark reality is marketing is incredibly important and becoming more and more important every day, because there's, given the work that I do, I'm fortunate that I get to see all sorts of amazing content in all sorts of forms, meaning it's early, it's finished, it's in process, etc. The difference, unfortunately, is not just that the ideas are great, that the content is great, but you have great content supported by great marketing. We each get to define what great marketing is, but if you don't have a marketing engine underneath it, it's going to die on your hard drive, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
That is the harsh truth, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
So with social distancing probably becoming a norm in the foreseeable future, how do you see it changing your business?
Well, for our business, there isn't that much of a change. So we used to do lots of things face-to-face in terms of a lot of the initial work that we do with clients. We're now doing that remotely. So, we've made some adjustments and modifications. I mean, there's nothing that is truly, that truly replaces a face-to-face experience. Zoom and all the tools that we have now are far better than what we've had. But there is, something to be said for having a meal with a client and spending some time and things not being so scripted. So we're fortunate that there isn't a huge direct impact. I think when you expand that question a little bit further for our clients, given that many of our clients derive a good chunk of their revenue from events, from keynote speaking and workshops and face-to-face, it's a big unknown, right? So there is both crisis and opportunity, right? The crisis is if the only way that you can deliver your content is face-to-face in a keynote or a workshop, you're in big trouble. The flip side of that is the opportunities right now are the trends have been for a long time moving away from face-to-face and analog. And I think one of the positives, if I should say so, coming out of this is it's just accelerating the digitization of content and the democratization of content, that you've got to really, really start to sit down and think, how do I deliver the experience? How do I deliver the value in ways that don't require me to be in the room? How do I use the tools? How do I break down my content into viable frameworks and models that are replicatable and teachable? It requires a different amount of work, and it requires a lot of people to totally rethink the way they operate.
Yeah. So do you see a way in which people work, engage, and produce change outbound of this pandemic?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's different segments, right? So many of us have been used to working remotely or working from home or hotel rooms, or you have your laptop and your device and your internet connection, you can function. And this hasn't changed that. I think there's a huge amount of people. I don't know what the percentage is, but typically people that either haven't questioned the way they do things, or it's organizational culture or politics or whatever the case is, that say, no, you have to get on a train or in your car and be at your desk at 8 in the morning, and then you stay until 6, and whatever. And I think initially a lot of those folks struggled with this concept of, what if I'm not in the office, I'm not working, right? Providing value, creating value, doing your work, for many is more of a state of mind than a state of a physical presence. Now, that being said, there's lots of people, medical and other professions where you do need more to do that more. But I think it's forcing people to question the way they've always done things, the way things have always been done, the culture. And I think for many people, they're going to come out of this going, you know what? I don't want to go back to an office 5 days a week. Maybe I'll go back twice a week, 5 times a month, whatever the case may be.
This is changing a lot of organization, the way everybody works. And I think this will also improve their productivity. So,
well, I think from a productivity standpoint, I think the other thing people will realize is, wait a minute, it used to be a 12-hour day between my commute and getting to the office and getting settled. How much work was I actually doing? I'm able to actually get done whatever needed to be done in half of that time, because I'm not dilly-dallying over the coffee machine. I'm not, fiddling around. When we have a Zoom call, right, it's scheduled for these 8 people to be on for this 45 minutes to achieve this objective, and then we go on to the next thing. The structure of it forces us to stay on point, where I think when a lot of people actually think about how they spend their days in a traditional office environment, they're going to ask, was that meeting necessary? Did I need to be there? How much time is wasted? Oh, it's Sally's birthday in accounting, so we got to go take a little break and wish her happy birthday. Those are all lovely things to do, but from a productivity standpoint, I'm not convinced. I think the other side of that is, from a social distancing perspective, the trend over the last 10 or 15 years is, let's get people as close as can be, and sitting almost on top of each other, which I always found distracting. Like, how could you be on a phone call with somebody sitting here and somebody's eating their lunch and all this other stuff? And now there is a safety component to that, where I think we need to rethink what an office looks like, and how can we do that in a way that's not putting anybody's health at jeopardy.
that is really nice. Yeah, it makes so much sense. So do you have any other thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Any other thought? I mean, I think, obviously we're living through scary times. People want to make sure that they and their loved ones are healthy. They want to make sure that financially they're secure and they're safe, and their jobs aren't at risk. But I also think there's opportunity here. There will be, like any other crisis, there will be winners and there will be losers, right? And I think that you have to really, this forces you to rethink every part of your business process, from who you serve, how you serve them, systems, processes, things that you do, how many paper do you need to touch? And I think we'll come out of this more effective, more efficient, and I think we'll also have a higher regard for the human interaction and human contact. I mean, I think a lot of people are, what are they missing in the office? They are missing that social element, the going to lunch with friends. That's critically important. There's a tremendous amount of loneliness. There's a tremendous amount of boredom. There's all that's going on. And I think we have to cope with that as well.
So it has positive as well as negative effects. But
Yep. Yeah, I mean, one of the unknowns to me is how quickly people are going to be to do as much business travel as they did before, for a couple of reasons. One is they're going to rethink, is it really necessary to get on that plane, to do that thing, to go meet with these people for 2 or 3 hours? Is it worth the risk? Is it a real risk or a perceived risk? Is it worth the cost, right? We're going into a recession where is it more effective to do something in a digital way than the cost of travel and all that? And I think we're going to probably do it a bit less, but make the most of the time that we do have when we're actually face-to-face. I mean, there have been so many meetings I've been in that are face-to-face, and I'm like, that could have been an email. That was a total waste of 23 people's time. So I think we're going to value that face-to-face time more.
Yeah, so true. So Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, Peter.
Great. Thank you.
It's been really an enriching experience for me, and I'm sure it will be for our audience too.
I hope so. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Thank you so much.